Are you ready? That's our last talk
Very
in this
good.
summit, PTSD Summit. And we are already there. International bestseller author. And congratulations to all of them, Roseline, Maricelly, Jason, Louise, and yeah, these are here. And we also have external speakers here who I'm so happy to have them. And we're going to talk about domestic violence today. Be with us till the end and join us if you have any question about this topic. Isn't it exciting to have all of you here? Just try to mute all of you, and then we go through introduction and see who we are talking to today. All right, somebody's gone. I don't know. Something's happening. All right, we go from Shona Harris. First of all, she's a bestseller author, and she was in one of my author promotion shows. Congratulate for your best-selling tag. I know you have it long time, but she's also relational expert, relationship expert, and I'm gonna I'm gonna leave everything to her to talk about herself. Welcome to my show.
Thank you very much for having me. And congratulations on your bestseller, too. My name is Shauna Harris. I am a certified clinical sexologist. As Pentea mentioned, an author, and I also am a domestic violence survivor. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Now we go to Jason. You know, I'm actually, can you unmute yourself? Yes. I'm actually very amazed with his story inside the book, PTSD Compass. He is a detective, international detective, and also he has a very nice um, topic in this book. We're gonna go through his background, and then we're gonna come back there. The reason I have him here is that because we're gonna talk about domestic violence and also first responders, because in this society not everybody talk about this, especially during the COVID. We had a lot of issues, problem, and these first responders were in the front line all the time, and I really appreciate them here. And this book is an opportunity just to say thanks for everybody being here in hospitals, in as a firefighters on other areas. They really help us. Thank you for being here, Jason.
Thank you very much. That was a great introduction. Yeah, I was also a homicide detective for the last 3 years of my career. I was injured by PTSD 4 years ago, which was an ability for me to learn tremendously about mental health and about the cause and effect of that, as well as our responses to trauma. And from my profession as a police officer for 21 years, I saw some pretty explosive things, some pretty heartbreaking situations that I was through, some pretty helpless situations that I was involved in. And what has kind of brought me to a point of is providing solutions. So I formed a not-for-profit called New Hope Field of Dreams, and what we're doing is building self-sustained communities, safe communities for our mentally injured people to come and heal. And behind me, there's a big board with a lot of different things. So peer-to-peer support, equine therapy, art therapy, ecotherapy, properly trained practitioners, holistic medicines, a whole gamut of things to help us to better understand our traumas. And unfortunately, a lot of it does end up in domestic violence.
Yes,
Yes.
thank you so much. So let's go to Rosalind. First of all, thank you so much for your part in PTSD Compass. That was amazing chapter. I really enjoyed, and I can actually, if you look at that book, I talk about you a little bit and talk about war, and I really feel it because I've been there for 8 years. I never fought, I never been in battlefield, but I understand it hurts. Thank you for being part of it, and congratulations for being #1 best-selling author on this book.
Thank you so much, Pantea. It's such an honor to be here. I am Roslyn Salazar. I am a retired Air Force officer. I'm a combat veteran. I am also a PTSD recovery coach. I like to help military, active duty members, and veterans, along with their families, empower them to heal, help them with their healing process, and to discover their purpose in life.
Thank you so much. And then Christy Pepper. Am I correct? Am I pronouncing you right? Am I pronouncing you right?
It's Piper.
Piper, sorry.
Piper.
Christy Piper. So Christy is an author, and she also talks about domestic violence, right? So actually Liz introduced her to me, and I said, why not? We're gonna go through this domestic violence topic because this month is about domestic violence. And as women, we are always affected, and it's better to have more knowledge and how to overcome domestic violence. Thank you for being here, Christy. Please just give me some introduction about yourself.
Thanks for having me, Pantea. My name's Christy Piper, and I recently wrote the best-selling book, Girl, You Deserve More: How to Break His Spell Over You, Escape Your Toxic Partner, and Become Independent. So this is a book that can help women who are currently in an abusive situation and they need to leave. And I'm also finding that a lot of supportive people, whether it's therapists, counselors, coaches, and church leaders, are also looking to this book for a lot of really good resources to share. And I also coach women as well who have been in and struggled with toxic relationships, heal from them, and find a great partner.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's the great purpose of life. Like, trauma is something and we have to overcome, but after you overcome, you try to help others. And because you already been there, you know what are the fastest way to be in there. Sorry. And then we have Dr. Lisette Batel, and she is also author, and she's a contributor to PTSD Compass. She has 2 parts in there, one about the domestic violence, and she also talk about her own struggle, suicidal thoughts, and she has a partner who already suicide. So I don't want to talk about this. You can read about this in the book, but yeah, here it is. Thank you so much for being here. Please introduce yourself. Where are you here? Oh, hang on. Yeah.
Okay, we're good now.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, hey, thank you so much for having me, and I'm very excited to be here today. I'm Dr. Liz Bataille, and I'm 2 years and 3 months out from self-publishing my #1 multi-international best-selling book, Life Launch: Surviving the Storms of Physical and Sexual Abuse. And that's book 1 because I got partway, I got reached my word limit, and I realized it was only up to age 25. So, but the book actually springboarded me into speaking and coaching and starting basically a business that is for trying to gather people together and help people, much like you've already heard from the other panelists on this summit. It's called the Arise Mind, Body, Spirit Healing Institute. It's a web institute. And I'm gathering my nation together now, and I'm putting a course together and using a lot of these strategies that you've already heard about in the previous 2 days of this summit, and already from some of the folks that have just introduced themselves. And lastly, before I finish, I just a couple months ago, I got the state approval for a charitable foundation. I'm going to work on the federal for the Benjamin J. Dubrow Rainbow of Hope charitable foundation for mental health and suicide prevention in memory of my late husband that you mentioned, Pantea. So Jason, we definitely need to talk. And thank you guys for having me.
So, yeah, the good thing about the summit is always that people know each other, even experts talk to each other and they connect. And that's what I love. As you see here, all of them are bestseller. All of them here are bestseller. So we have our books here and we're going to help others to find out about their own solutions. So we have Susan Louise Gabrielle here. Let me unmute her. To be honest, I was really impressed for what she's doing. She's an author and she has a story of domestic violence. And I don't want to talk about it now. I want her to talk about her daughter. And this is so heart-wrenching when you see this kind of situation. And the good thing is she's an advocate for domestic violence and she try to help others how to resolve these issues and how to become more aware of what's happening. Thank you for being here, Susan.
Thank you. Yes, Susan Louise Gabriel. My book is called Wheels of Injustice, Saving My Child from the Child Savers, which is a little bit of an intriguing title. My story is a little backwards from what most people would expect. My daughter was taken by social services, removed from my home. My husband was accused of sexually molesting her, which was a false accusation. And the problems that we went through as a result of this false accusation were monumental. They were unbelievable. You when you read it in the book, you will think that I'm making it up, but I've got, I've written the book with all of the paperwork from the court system, all of the psychologist reports, everything that we went through. So what I really want people to be aware of is the concept of family abuse. Family abuse can occur when someone does not, adequately investigate. I think the most important thing is that investigations are accurate and the people take their time. They understand what's really going on. In my case, what happened was it occurred in the 80s when the child protection laws were different than they are today. They're better today, partly as a result of some of the work that I did back in the 80s, helping to change some of the laws. But I am always very happy to speak about, domestic situations, violence, the kinds of things that happen in families, and often the kinds of things that happen to families.
Yes.
And that's can be difficult.
Thank you so much. Yes, we're going to go through it more deeply. And that's why we are here, right? Maricelly, Ramos, first of all, thank you for being here. And then congratulations for being #1 bestseller in PTSD Compass. And I know you also have your own book too.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Maricelly. I am the author of Who Is She? It's a story of trauma, survival, and healing. I speak a little bit about my experience with domestic violence, how did I overcome fear, and how I moved forward after leaving that relationship. I am a certified life coach. I'm a podcaster, and I help women, relocate after they leave an abusive relationship with resources. So I'm an advocate of women who leave abusive relationships.
Yes, and then we have Kimberly Simons. She's also an author, and again, she talks about domestic violence. That's the first time I have her in the summit, and I'm really happy to have her because Liz actually introduced these two amazing people to me, Christy and Kimberly, and I really wish to know about their story. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be a part of the summit. So just to introduce myself, my name is Kimberly Simons, and I am a purpose and success coach. And I have been a survivor of PTSD through many different experiences. So from childhood molestation, rape in college, attempted suicide, even dating someone who extended emotional abuse. And what I have come to is that we as women are strong, and together we are really strong. And so I have a belief that as a community of women that we can be unstoppable. And my business that I have is called Purpose First because I work with women to get over whatever traumatic experiences they've had, whatever limiting beliefs they've had, the things that are keeping them from becoming their highest selves and who it is that they're supposed to become, their God-given purpose.
Yeah, thank you so much. Before we go further and talk about this topic, we have few second break and we come back. Please subscribe to Pontal Coulthard Transition channel to get the latest interviews and order my book PTSD Compass through Amazon. How to confront PTSD and navigate trauma to triumph. All right. Before we get there, I just want to talk about PTSD Compass. We just released it. It's #1 bestseller in Amazon, US and Canada. So if you want to know about child abuse or child care, abusive relationship, domestic violence, grief recovery, or if you want to know about the mind and body connection and how to recover from PTSD, you can grab the copy now because we are on promotion. So we go and start from Shona Harris. I know you are relationship expert and you have a lot of experience yourself in domestic violence. So tell me about your experience and why are you an advocate for domestic violence?
Okay. Well, in a nutshell, I was always like a fiery, feisty individual who, when I thought about domestic violence, I thought of like a specific person and I sort of put them not in a box per se, but when I thought of domestic violence and the people involved, it would not have been my personality or it would not have been somebody that I knew. And boy, was I wrong. But I think that I'm an advocate because I was somebody, like I said, that was fiery and feisty and was determined and motivated and so incredibly social and just willing to, conquer the world. And when you become involved in a domestic violence situation, your world as you knew it, mine did a 180. I was, brought to a different country and I lost the support of my family and my friends. And I had 2 kiddos that I was fiercely protective of, but it just to begin with, but then it becomes fiercely protective, not of the outside world, but of your inner world as well. And I am an advocate because I was somebody who had a voice, who lost their voice and then had to find it again. And it's not easy. And, sometimes it's a daily struggle and, the oddest things trigger you. But I just think that, one foot in front of the other and God gives you feet that point forward and there's no rear view mirror attached to our heads. So, I'm an advocate of doing whatever I can to help people move forward and move through it and realize that, they can trust again and they can have a beautiful relationship. despite what they have gone through, and it can be more beautiful than they had ever anticipated. So I
Yeah,
am 100% an advocate of that.
beautiful. Yeah. I actually read her book. I love it. It's about communication and how you can build a relationship based on communication. We're going to go through it and come back to you again. But now we go to Jason, and I want him to talk about his story of domestic violence and PTSD.
Yeah, thank you, Bente. Mine, it's very multifaceted. Not only do I have professional experience from obviously being a police officer and being involved in a number of domestic violence situations, through my PTSD, I've also been on both sides of the domestic violence, emotional trauma, triggers to trauma, reacting in certain ways. And it's definitely something that Shauna mentioned there about communicating. Communication is the key to any successful relationship, and a lot of the times that's clearly not there. There's I guess a partnership that we need to establish within our relationship with each other, as opposed to a hierarchy. We are equal. I'm not any better than any female. The only aspect of that would be that I am the protector in the physical as well as in the spiritual. If a bad guy comes running through the door, I should be the one standing up to protect my partner, not throwing her in front of me, but she is beside me. And that was truthfully a vision that God gave me about the revival of women in the Middle East. A very, very, very powerful vision of the change that is happening on the earth right now, with the empowerment, the protection of women, and treating them properly and loving them properly. I found a lot of the world has shown us a very perverted way of loving, a very perverted way of nurturing, a false understanding of relationships and what they look like. And it can be very, very, very impactful. I've even dealt with domestic violence on human trafficking levels, which is terrible. That's a different story all on its own, that entire side of that industry. What I have found that in order to repair from a lot of these things, we have to, number one, be around like-minded people who can help us to understand our injury. We have to learn about forgiveness. We have to understand where our battles are, and they aren't with each other. There are spiritual entities that mess us around. And that's where I've come through a lot of my healing from, is through understanding where our battles are with. It doesn't excuse the actions, but it helps you to understand why they may be reacting in that particular way. And it's definitely helped me along my journey with self-growth, as well as empowering men and boys and my 3 daughters to do the right things in the world that we live in, which is tough, especially for beautiful women who go through a gamut of things that are inappropriate. Or he doesn't even mean about the physical. The physical doesn't matter. It's I really don't like the way that men treat women, generally speaking, and I'm trying to empower men to love women properly.
Yeah.
Properly, and to understand what that really means.
Yeah, I know Chrissy also has a point in domestic, because I'm going to relate all the topics together. So Christy has a great story on domestic violence and relationship, and she's an advocate for domestic violence. Can I have your stories here?
Sure. So I always thought of myself as a strong woman. I got my job at 16 as soon as I could work. I always made my own money. I paid for my own stuff. I was super independent, or so I thought. I ended up, meeting somebody and getting involved actually in graduate school. And little by little, I just became more financially dependent on him. And he was like, I left him once, actually to move across the country to be in another graduate program, a PhD program, actually. And I lost my funding, and my parents were going through a divorce and just a lot of family turmoil. And I just felt like, oh my gosh, I'm alone across the country. I don't know anybody here that I'm close with. And, he started trying to get back together with me, and, saying like, oh, I'll take care of you. And, he just said all the right things. So I ended up moving across the country to New York to be with them, another place I'd never lived before. And yeah, things just got worse than they had been, in Florida, where I had been around family and friends.
Yeah, that's fine. I know when even if we talk about it and we look at it, we do the journaling about what's happening to us. It really helps us. I mean, it hurts. Maricelly also has the same situation. She also had her kids, right? And she had to take care of them. And that's the worst part of the relationship, because now you're dealing, protecting your kids, right? And this is not easy when you are stuck there in the domestic violence. So, and she also wrote a chapter there. So if you want, you can look at the chapter in PTSD Compass. You have to unmute yourself.
Hi, Pantia. Can you repeat that again? I'm sorry.
I just want to know about your story about the domestic violence.
So, I grew up in an abusive home. I started my own relationship at 15. He was 22. He was married. My mother allowed him to, sometimes in our culture, it is fine if you're 13, 14 to date an older guy. It's something that they'd allow. So when I was 15, he was 22. He was always controlling. He was always, you can't hang out with your friends. You can, wear certain things. So at the age of 18, I decided to move in with him because we had a child. So, I got pregnant at 15, had her when I was 16. Things escalated. Of course, now we're living alone. So now he was able to control me more. Now he's able to, I couldn't hang with friends or family. So I moved to a place I didn't have anybody. He was the provider. I couldn't get a job at that time. I didn't have a cell phone. He was the only one who had a phone at that time. So, we had 3 children together. I had that trauma bond where he was the only person that I knew. This is the man that, I grew up with, who I had 3 children with. And of course, at one point where I moved out to a different state thinking, things might change. It didn't. It got worse. I found the strength to call the police. He got arrested. And, you might have think, I learned my lesson, or, I knew any better, but I got into a different relationship and it was worse.
The
So,
pattern
at that
repeated.
time, not only
Yeah.
he hurt me, but he was hurting my daughter.
Wow, that's the
He was
worst part.
abusing my daughter. And, I spent about 5 years with him. And, I fell into alcohol and depression and suicidal thoughts. And what's in for me, I pray to God, is this is my life. So I end up being alone for a little bit. And I end up falling into a relationship where he was mentally abusing me. He was a little bit younger than me, and I knew at that time that this is not the relationship for me. But I felt like validation, like, I needed someone to make me happy instead of me making myself happy, instead
Justifying.
of loving myself. So I learned through all those relationships that at the end it was self-love, self-value, respecting my own self. So it took me years to find that, that own light at the end of the tunnel. And I help women that, to overcome that fear of starting over, and knowing that yes, we went through this, but we do deserve better. We
Exactly.
do. The healing journey was hard, and I still healed every day, because a lot of people think that trauma is gone, and it's, trauma didn't make me stronger. I chose to be stronger for my trauma. It's
Wow.
never gone. It's always going to be part of your life. But I choose to heal and to become stronger, and I help women to do the same.
Yes, thank you so much. I know you have a great purpose. And she also has a very empowering message. I will talk about it in our trailers and in our masterclass. You see, she was really strong and I was really impressed. And Kimberly Simons, I never had you there in my summit. So tell me about yourself. Exactly what was your story?
So, my story, as I said, I started out, um, I was molested as a child. So, in that molestation, it's very interesting because as a child, you don't always know what's happening. You don't have a term for it. And because you don't have a term for it and you don't know, what's really happening, you don't know that it's something that is wrong. And as I grew up, it wasn't anything that really even stayed on my mind. It wasn't until I became an adult that I was able to reflect back on the event and realize what had actually happened to me. Meanwhile, in between all of that, my first year in college, I had gone to a party and had met, was actually there with roommates, with all my roommates, lots of friends, and happened to meet someone there, and very friendly person, so I thought. And we went to a quiet space in the home to have a talk because it was just so loud with all the music and the dancing, and people were drinking and everything. And I was raped. This was during that time where date rape was still a new term. And there was the controversy of, can you actually be raped by someone that you are with on purpose? And so that was a very challenging time in my life. I
How were all you old?
I
How were
was
you?
I was actually 18 18 at the time.
Very
Yeah.
young.
Yes. And the home that I grew up in, the home life was such that I did not bring it to the attention of my family. It was something I felt like I needed to deal with on my own. And I wasn't dealing with it well. So that led to an attempted suicide. And of course, not successful. But it took a lot of years for me to heal from that. It took a lot of years for me to recognize that although this was a traumatic experience that had affected me, it was not an experience that had to define me. And much like some of the other panelists today, it was something that I had to choose to work through. I had to choose to not hide from it and to address the issue and to determine how I was going to take that and turn it into a way to strengthen myself, to move forward in my life, to find out exactly what was the purpose. There had to be a reason in my mind why God did not allow me to go through with my suicide. I was
Mm.
here for a purpose. So I started to look at this as, okay, so these experiences that I've had, maybe they did not happen to me, but perhaps the outcome is something that is happening for me. And I took that as, what can I do with this experience? How can I use this to impact the world? And so I began to, really just do some work on myself, finding out, what is the baggage that I am still carrying? So there was, of course, lack of confidence, just that belief that I did not deserve to actually be here. And I had to get over all of that. I had to move past that. And in determining the worth that I have, and knowing that there were so many other women who have experienced these same things, how can I help in those situations?
Yes.
What can I bring to the table for other women? And like I said, I have just this strong belief that we as women, I mean, we are made of some really tough stuff.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. And we can empower each other. We can
Yes.
help each other through anything. And just to go on and be a mentor to other women who in turn, it is my dream, will then go and mentor others.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
And Lise actually has a story about the suicide, right? Can you talk about this with us? Hang on.
Oh, okay. Thank you for unmuting me. It starts out really with domestic violence, and I had there is suicide in my family as well. But wanted to just kind of briefly hit on, my parents fought physically throughout my whole entire childhood, and that is kind of the way my mother was raised, and she was molested by her father. My grandfather also molested some of my aunts and me and a couple of his other female grandchildren. My parents also believed in corporal punishment. My mother used to chase me and other siblings around with kitchen utensils in her hand. I used to have to lock myself in my room so that I wouldn't get hurt physically by her. She would stab the child next to her in the leg, sitting at the dining room table, if you just leaned your chair back. My mother was a rageaholic. Okay, so I can just kind of cover that. But she excelled with lunging at my father with a butcher knife when I was in my early 20s and my two younger sisters were at home, and I felt I needed to protect them. So I felt guilty for being away from that environment. She also came at my father with a loaded shotgun and hit him with the butt of the gun in his legs and bruised him. When I was a teenager, I was a cutter. I was bulimic, and I had my suicidal ideation. Started counseling at that time. Thank God my mother did identify that and sent me to counseling. That helped me. As a teen, I was also taken advantage of by several teachers and coaches, the authority figures. I was molested by a dentist, a minister, an uncle, and I was raped twice in college. When I got engaged, that gentleman pinned me to the ground with his knees and had his fist raised over my face. I had to act like I was complying to grab the keys to run out of the house and get into my car, and called the police on him for hurting me. I had bruises around my neck. He was trying to strangle me as well. And then my third husband, the father of my child, he did end his life by suicide, and I found him. So there was traumatic situation there. And then after that relationship, closer to today, in 2009, I was engaged to a person who threatened suicide, and that ended the engagement about 2 weeks before we were married. But 2 years later, and Jason, you may have even heard about this case, but 2 years later, I hadn't had any contact with him, and he moved out of the state. I was watching the national news and saw him getting arrested for having kidnapped, murdered, and chopped up and dumped a child who was the same age as my son. So I felt as though I had escaped, you know, an even horrible, you know, occurrence. So anyway, I think a lot of that background, you know, of course, it led me, as you had heard from Miss Ramos, that, you know, I did get into the drugs and the alcohol as well. That became part of my story coping mechanism, the self-medication. And then through all the counseling and thank God I made it through any of my suicidal ideations. I never actually attempted it because I never had the means that I wanted, but through my healing and then finally writing the book and putting everything in one place and realizing and kind of like honoring my history as what it was, because I never realized and embraced what had actually happened to me all those years as a whole, you know, and grasped, wow, I'm a miracle that I've survived all this stuff. And then I recognize, you know, I'm consider myself a normal American, you know. If this kind of stuff has happened to me, it's got to have happened to a lot of other people that aren't famous actors and actresses, because this really came out for me around the Me Too movement. And that's what really started me. I heard, I think somebody that spoke earlier talked about their voice, you know, and when I wrote the book, that's when I really felt like I was letting my voice fly, because I never like charged anybody for rape in college. You know, again, it was one of those things. I was drunk. I felt like it was my fault. You know, I was the dummy that put myself in that position. So none of these people have ever faced anything. And when I wrote the book, I didn't write it to expose anybody. That Dr. Liz's Bataille is a pseudonym for me. I still have these family members are still alive. Not my grandfather, thank God. But, you know, my mother, you know, it's her dad. I'm not going to, you know, try to accuse anybody. I needed to do it for me. Write the book for me.
Exactly.
But anyway,
that is so from you.
Yeah, the red flags. I finally realized that I learned the red flags and the writing on the wall. And as somebody had said earlier, a couple people had said about communication. And now I just wanted to finally say that I steer clear of anybody who shows signs of anger management problems, and also people that suck your spirit. You know, I stay away from what I call spirit suckers. And I only go around people that feed my spirit and who know how to communicate with their words. So.
Beautiful. Now we're going to go through one sentence empowerment at the end. So you think about it and we're going to talk about it later. So we have two persons left here. One of them is Roseline and another Susan. Because we are talking about child abuse, we're going to go back to Susan first. She has a very touching story. And I want you to talk about it. You, in the beginning, you talk about it a little bit, but what is your purpose right now, and what do you want to announce here?
Yes, although my story is a little bit unusual, a little different from the other stories, people can be abused by a system. And that's something that I learned. And I learned also that there are other people out there that are facing the same things, and that there's power in numbers and power in getting together, talking about it. I formed a support group. I linked up with other groups in other states. We found lots of material that was very helpful to support us as well. Psychology reports and various things. But in the end, we all banded together. We worked to change the laws, change the system, to get social workers and other people retrained. That's how we worked out our trauma. And at one point, I was so extremely depressed, discouraged, and this was fairly early on, that I committed suicide. I mean, I jokingly say later I committed suicide, but it didn't take. I actually did take the pills. I went out into the mountains and did not intend for anyone to find my body. I laid down on a rock and was unconscious. And that's the last thing I remember until I remember sitting on a curb in front of a grocery store. But before I took the pills, I told God, I said, I can't deal with this anymore. If you want to save me, you're going to have to do it, because I can't go on. So God did save me. And that's really my message. My ultimate message is that there is a higher power there if we turn to that higher power for help and guidance. And that was what got me through.
And I know about your story about your child, that they
Mhm.
take it from you, right? And it
Yes,
was so
it was
difficult. Yes.
3 years. They took her away, and she should never have been taken away in the first place, but it was 3 years before I got her back. So it was a long, painful journey.
Yeah. I'm so happy that she's with you right now, and
Mhm.
but I know it's not easy. It's not the same child after 3 years, right? Is so much,
Right. Yes.
yeah, so much thing being there, and it takes
Yes.
time
And
to recover. Yeah.
right. And she was abused, definitely abused. She was abused by being taken away.
Yeah.
And so, she had to go through therapy. We all had to go through therapy. It was, something, like you said, that it left us changed. We weren't the same people.
Yeah. So, Roseline, I know your story is different. Everybody's story kind of different, but we are all related somehow. So tell me about yours. I know you also had this situation of PTSD and being numb, and you didn't want to talk to anybody after your PTSD and coming back from the battlefield. So tell me about your story here.
In a nutshell, joining the military was my childhood dream. Spent about 12 years, and then I deployed to Afghanistan. This was 11 years ago. And this is where military sexual trauma, rape, and everything you can think of that women could possibly go through, it's ignored. It's not exposed. And so what happened to me was, we get there, we got the incoming rockets, we got ambushed in our convoys, and on top of that, I got bullied by my Army boss. And, I launched an investigation, and fast forward, I lost, and that's why I shut down. But before that, there are women out there who get raped. I myself was coerced into doing things I didn't want to. I was mad at God, but my roommate helped me through. She prayed with me every night, and other women was getting raped, and they came to me because I was the ranking person at the time. And when I went to my Air Force leadership, I got shut down. They told me that it was my fault I let this happen to me and the other women. And a lot of women were scared to report anything, scared of the repercussions like I had. But I shut down. While deployed, I attempted suicide. I downed a lot of sleeping pills. They found me and sent me to treatment, but I stayed for the remaining 6 months to hear about the outcome of the investigation, which I said I lost because I wasn't given a lawyer and my boss was. So I looked bad. I looked like this crybaby, but I came home. I got medically retired, and he got to stay in. So after leading and managing troops, airmen, I went from that to a crying baby. I had a baby 3 months before I got medically retired, before I left the military. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I had a hard time raising my newborn. My family was there to help. I wrote my book because of all the injustices that happened to women. And it was my way of educating and exposing what was going on, what went on, what still goes on. It took me 10 years of therapy and other treatments to get where I'm at. But the book was my piece, where I could let everybody know, with legal background, that I'm not making this up, but this really happened in the battlefield, where women get raped while in convoys. They get raped in the bathroom at night. And I used to wonder, why is this happening to me? And I tell myself, turn my negative experiences into blessings so I can help and be the voice for other women.
Beautiful. And you are so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing this.
Well, thank you.
Because, I have her in my book, PTSD Compass. And as you know, that's already a bestseller status in US and Canada. If you want, you can read her story. That's so touching. I love that story. And now we have Ellen. She joined us a little bit late, but it's always blessing to have her. She's been in my different interviews, and she's blessing to me because she's been there in domestic violence as well, and she has a lot of experiences. She has a beautiful book as well, and I'm reading her book. It's not finished yet, but it's really good writing style. Every word really talked to me. And she also she's a healer. She's a sound healer, and she has a really nice voice, and that's why I wanted to have her here. After everybody talked, she can introduce herself, and I really wish she can give us some sound healing as well.
Yes. And good
Yeah.
afternoon. I've been with patients, so I couldn't come earlier. But Pantia, I'm hearing your wheezing, honey, and I want to get the sound healing. So I think we should do that. I will give you a little introduction. I wrote the memoir, Nothing Ever Goes On Here, which is the story of how I overcame and broke free from the chains of generational domestic violence. And in the middle of my story, I went through a major healing crisis where I couldn't breathe. So I really relate to Pantia with her asthma. And during that crisis, I learned a lot about myself that I didn't know. And I learned about self-love and forgiveness. And for the last 32 years, I've now been working with patients, integrating acupuncture with sound healing, energy medicine, intuitive coaching, counseling, whatever you want to call it. I will stand on my head if it will help. And today I am writing my second book, which is so much more fun than the first book. The first book was so hard. And I just started a podcast and writing a new show. So I came to the sound healing because when it became clear to me that I needed to be a healer, which I did not want to be, I began working with people as the guides that work with and through me. They said, now we want you to put that sound into that person's knee. And I was like, hell no, there is a line. I do have a boundary. And anyway, long story short, they gave me a horrific headache for about 6 weeks until I connected the dots and was like, oh, this energy, if I will do the sound healing, then the energy will move. And so I've been doing the sound healing as part of my practice. So Pantia, should we just run to that? And if so, I need to just go and get my singing bowl and I'll be right back. Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Actually,
all right.
you go and write that.
Okay, good.
When we have this, everybody can see what she's doing. And then after we finish, I really want you to talk about journaling and what was your experience about this. Because one of my purpose is advocating journalism and journalists. Because that's the one way for PTSD recovery, and it really helped all of us because all of us somehow related to mental health and PTSD. So we're gonna have some interesting sound healing. Be prepared, and yeah, I'm always excited to have her here.
Oh, I'm so
Yeah,
glad. Thank
go
you.
ahead.
Okay, so for those of you who may have not ever received sound healing or know what it is, the particular form that I do is I use my voice, but I'm now also using this beautiful healing bowl that was gifted to me by one of my very first patients, and it opens the heart, and that's why I like to use it with it. The sound that you will hear is guided to me by guides from other planes. And so I never know what's going to come out of my mouth. I just trust that what is coming is appropriate for this group or the person that I'm working with. So the only thing you need to do is to relax and just to allow it. If you want to close your eyes, feel free to do that, not necessary. And if you are somebody who tends to not feel grounded, you may want to put your feet on the ground so that you can feel the ground below you. All righty. And Pantia, I am going to use you as my focal person because I hear that asthma and I want to help that. But the lungs in Chinese medicine are to do with grief. And so for those of you who may not have lung issues, but may have issues with, say, grief, it will also be appropriate. The other thing is that even though I'm working with Pantia and the group, you will hear the sound that you most need for your healing today. All right? And take in a nice deep breath and just allow the sound to be felt within your being, within your physical body. And when you're ready, you can slowly come back to wherever you're sitting. You can wiggle your fingers and toes. And you
Wow.
can just allow yourself to feel that. So, how does that feel,
I
my
love
dear?
that. I love that.
Oh,
Thank you. I always
good,
love it. Yeah.
good, good.
Okay. Yes. Now for the last part, I'm gonna go through everybody and talk about journaling, how it help PTSD. Just in 1-2 sentence, if you can summarize it. We start from Shona.
Journaling. Well, I love to write, and I've always loved to write since I was an itty bitty muffin. But when it came to journaling, I kind of fought it at first because it was just hard to write that stuff down. And to me, I was not a victim. I was not a victim. I was not a victim until I realized, okay, I'm going to accept the fact that I'm not a victim, but I have been victimized. So I think the way I look at it, and I get all of my clients to do it, I call it a brain dump, because I think sometimes that takes the stigma away from journaling. Because a lot of my male patients, and I don't mean to like pigeonhole, but a lot of my male patients look at me like I'm crazy when I say journaling. But once I explain it and what it does, through the brain and the mind-body connection and pen to paper, I just think that it has been a vessel for me that has been vital in my healing journey.
Thank you so much. Now, Jason, I know, Jason, that was your first book, right? You wrote in this book. Yeah. How
Yes.
was your feeling? And thank you so much for your long writing. I wanted to remove some part of it, but I couldn't remove so much because it was very informative. So what was your feeling when you wrote in your first book?
It was empowering. One of the things that I've found through journaling, we need to feel to heal. We need to express our thoughts and emotions in order to process them. And that's a big part of recovery that I coach people along. And I ask them to make 3 lists. The first one is your joy list, your accomplishment list, something that you can always reflect on that will tell you how amazing you are and how God actually sees you, not how the world around you sees you and what other people have lied to you about. And that's always there. So you can always come back to it into a positive mindset. Then I invite people to write down 2 traumatic timelines. And this is going back to birth up until your present age. The first one is any time that you've experienced trauma at the hands of another person, system, or any other organization where trauma comes from. And then the other list is times that you have caused trauma to other people. And then rating that on a score of 1 to 10 as you go through, and then going back and acknowledging your thoughts and your emotions in that traumatic event or series of events, validating them, and then releasing them and letting them go. So journaling is massive, even in what I call throwaway letters, where I would write something about a relative, perhaps. I was sexually assaulted when I was a young boy as well, and I can't speak to that person at this point, but I can definitely express my thoughts and emotions and then burn that letter, which I like to do that. I like to get my thoughts down and then destroy them and then take everything that the enemy meant for evil and turning it into good. And
Thank you so much. Yeah.
changing the student.
Yeah. Thanks. Rosalind, what was your experience? I know you already have a book, but now you had your second book as a bestseller. What do you think?
Journaling is something that my mom and dad always told me to do. And I didn't know why, but I did it all my life. And it helped me when I was deployed and helped me still now, because when I write something down, my feelings and emotions, like Jason said, I get really mad and then I just refer back to it. That's part of my healing. Each time I go back to it, I either get more mad or I feel better. And one day I can confront I just look at the journal and like, okay, I'm not that mad anymore. It's the past.
Thank you. So what about you, Christy?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so writing my book, I would say, is like accidental journaling in a way. So when I've journaled in the past, or accidental journaled, it was for another purpose. Like, for example, for my book, it was sharing my story to help others who are in the situation now. And I find that journaling is definitely very healing. But if you know that your story can help somebody else, it's like journaling times 100. Like that healing is just exponential. And another way that I've accidentally journaled is I was also in the military, and I also filed some complaints against my certain people in my command as well in the Navy. And well, the whole process and system is so skewed against a complainant, and they protect the higher ups, but that's a whole nother discussion. And just having to write down every detail in those reports was actually very healing to me, because it was like validating what had actually happened, because they were trying to gaslight me. No, that didn't happen. And anytime that happens, whether in the military with a partner or anybody else, like until you write down your own reality, it's almost like maybe that didn't happen, maybe it didn't exist. And when it's written and put out into the world, you know it did happen.
Exactly, because you only know it yourself when it happened to you, maybe or relatives or your friends around you, but some of the things inside you hidden that nobody knows, and you're going to talk about it and raise your voice. So what about you, Liz?
Yes, I kept a diary when I was younger, but being part of a large family, 7 kids, nothing was private. So that ended up being more of emotionally abusive, because everything that I wrote in there was exposed. So what I did was I wrote poetry. I started writing poetry when I was probably 12. And that is my next book that's coming out, because I realized after I wrote the first book that was part of my healing process, was the writing. So I'm glad that you brought this up. And I wanted to, obviously, the writing of the book, just like Christy just said, for sure, bringing that all in one place, and then getting it out there for other people to heal from. That was a big part of the healing. Through AA and NA, we have to write our steps out. There's a lot of writing in recovery of 12 steps. And then I want to tie it back to yesterday's summit panel that you had. For me, the writing is a way of getting that negative energy out of our bodies and just getting rid of it and dealing with it. Like Jason said, you could burn it. You could put it in a God box. We've buried stuff in a God box before. You can put it in a God box and give it to somebody else for safekeeping if you don't want to burn it or you don't want to bury it. So just the important thing is getting it down, getting that negative energy out of your body. One way to do it. And of course, vocally and speaking and sharing verbally is another way. So I'm full proponent of writing. So
Thank you for sharing this with us. And what about you, Susan? What did you feel when you started writing that book? Oh, you have to unmute it. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I started writing my book actually 30 years ago, just a few years after all of the events took place. I got to a certain point. It was very traumatic to write it. And at first it was good. It helped me to get things out on paper. But once I got to the point where I had to start describing the really difficult parts of my experience, I had to stop. I couldn't write anymore. So I did not pick it up again until about 3 years ago, when I happened to make a friend who was just wanted to know more about me. And through the course of explaining more about me, telling this person more about myself, I happened to get into this story. And he encouraged me that I should write a book. And I hadn't really thought about it, but it turned out I still had the old manuscript. So I pulled it out and ended up finishing up the book.
Yeah, you
So,
told me. That's
yeah, it
interesting.
was
You had
a
it
long
before and then you
process.
refer to it after years. You kept it somewhere because sometimes you feel that this is not the right time to publish it. Maybe you are
Mhm.
not ready. Maybe you're going to modify it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was not ready to write that book. It was too painful. It took a long time to be able to see things clearly too, because when you're very close to a situation that's painful, your brain just kind of takes things and you keep going around in circles thinking about what you did, what you could have done differently, what you should have done differently, and that's kind of hard to untangle until you start writing. Once you
Yeah,
start writing, a lot of things become more clear.
exactly. And as you say, it's a healing process, help you to
Mhm.
understand where you stand, where you want to be, right? Yeah.
Right.
So Kimberly, what was your process? I know you haven't published it yet, but you are in the middle of writing, and that's a good top timing because we know what you're feeling right now.
Yeah, so I think for me, part of my problem is that I'm still in a stage of discovering things. Like I never went to therapy or anything after my rape, after my suicide attempt. I didn't go to therapy until I was after 50. I was over 50 before I ever went to a therapist. And from that very first session, there was so much that came out. And ever since then, it's like I'm still uncovering things. So as I'm writing my book, I'm writing things down, but then I'm finding, oh my gosh, I've got to go back and I've got to put that in there because I've just remembered that, or I just made this connection. I actually did a podcast interview recently, and someone asked me a question that completely explained my entire life, and I never even realized, I never made the connections. So I think that's really been my biggest challenge, is being able to sort it all out. Like Liz, I did a lot of poetry when I was younger. Writing in a diary was very challenging for me, but poetry was the way that I got my emotions out. And now I'm just trying to sort it all out.
You will be there. You will be published. All
Mhm.
of us publish here. It took me 2 years for my first book, and I was working in the middle of working. I was just, oh, that's break, lunch break, and I wrote. But it took me some time. But as soon as you write it, then it's easier to write the next one. And Ellen is writing her second book. Her first book was amazing. Like she said, I have a surprise for you, and she sent it by mail. And I was really amazed, and I love the writing style. How
Oh.
is it for you?
Well, journaling, I mean, I think I came out of the womb writing. And for me, journaling as a little girl was the way I kept my relationship with God. Almost all of my journal entries are dear God, or dear the God I hate today, or dear the God I'm loving maybe, or so it really allowed me to keep my connection with God. And in a way, God would speak back to me through the letters, because I'd write in a different letter, in a different color for the answer from God. So it also was a place where, in listening to everyone on the panel today, it allowed me my anger, it allowed me to scream, it allowed me to laugh at, things that were so hard that you either laugh or you cry. It allowed me everything that I couldn't say out loud. And then writing the book was, Kimberly, unlike you, I'd sort of gone the other direction. I did so much therapy that by the time I wrote the book, it was like, oh my gosh, knowing everything I know now, how am I going to put it together? So I think, whichever way you come from, it all works. But the book at the end of the book, people asked me, they were like, after all your therapy you've been through, Ellen, did you write the book for some kind of healing? And I said, no, I wrote it so that maybe I could help one other woman. But at the end of the book, I remember reading it and I stopped, tears filled in my eyes, and I said to myself, wow, woman, you are amazing. And it never, like, I was so hard on myself all my life, and reading what I had come through gave me such a deep appreciation for who I am.
Beautiful. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, actually, I had the exactly same feeling when I listened to my audio version of my book. And I said, oh, did I really wrote this? Did I really write this? It was so amazing when you see yourself as a published author. So here, I just want to ask everyone who are listening to this, if you have a story to share, if you think that you can help others with your story, you can reach me. And I have a publishing and branding company, Mary's Choice. And if you need some help, please let me know. And of course, again, Compass PTSD Compass is ready for purchasing, is already #1 bestseller in US and Canada. I really, really appreciate all of you to be here and share your stories and give us some hope about domestic violence. If you are in this situation, you don't need to be victimized. And you still need to validate in yourself that you are empowered, you can do it, and there are a lot of alternative ways rather than just medication. As Christy says, yes, sometimes we need medication to be in one place that we can start other things. And this is the way that we are all connected. We are here to help. And if you need any support, if you want to be connected, please let us know. And I already put everything there, all the links and all the supports. Thank you so much for being here. And I really wish to see you again. Thank you. Please subscribe to Pontal Coulthard Transition channel to get the latest interviews and order my book PTSD Compass through Amazon. How to confront PTSD and navigate trauma to triumph.